Governor Greg Abbott has designated the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR as foreign terrorist organizations. He's also directing Texas Department of Public Safety and district attorneys to investigate Islamic courts operating in North Texas. Now, is this all political theater, or is actually going to get something done about this? Let's check it out. I want to play a video from Fox 4 talking about these designations, and then I want to get into a 7-minute long interview with Greg Abbott talking about this.
Governor Greg Abbott also today labeling 2 Islamic groups as terrorist and criminal organizations.
And his proclamation bans the groups and those connected to them from acquiring land in Texas. Fox 4 Sean Rabb in our newsroom with the still developing story. Sean.
Yeah, very much so. The 2 groups are the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR, the Council on American-Islamic Relations. Now, neither are on any State Department or federal. And while only the federal government has the power to designate a foreign terrorist organization, the governor does have the authority to issue a proclamation and apply state penalties if there's a violation. In issuing that proclamation Tuesday, Governor Abbott said that the actions taken by the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR to support terrorism across the globe and subvert our laws through violence, intimidation, and harassment are unacceptable. Today, he said, I designated the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR as foreign terrorist organizations and transnational criminal organizations. These radical extremists are not welcome in our state and are now prohibited from acquiring any real property interest in Texas. In response to that, CAIR, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, had a stinging message, quoting, by defaming a prominent American Muslim institution with debunked conspiracy theories and made-up quotes, Mr. Abbott has once again shown that his top priority is advancing anti-Muslim bigotry, not serving the people of Texas. Abbott's actions fall under Senate Bill 17 that passed last legislative session, restricting foreign ownership of Texas real estate for individuals and entities from countries or groups deemed national security risk. But again, these 2 groups are...
And that bill that was signed into law is currently tied up in the courts because obviously it is very controversial, as it is deemed by some as some say it is he's discriminating against certain groups. But the law, similar law in Florida, has actually been upheld. So that's good news for Texas for this law.
Not on any State Department watch list or federal terrorist designation.
The federal concern and what Texas does about some property sales is not really all that big a deal. But it's a powerful statement by the governor, and it in turn can be seized on by law enforcement authorities to aggressively enforce the laws he cited in his proclamation. And so that's a political act in that it signals what priorities are for this administration, and it's in the State House, and what they think is important and what is not important.
Now, David Cole fully expects CAIR to answer in court if there follows what he calls zealous actions against them based on the governor's state designation. And multiple parties have already filed lawsuits to try and block Senate Bill 17, arguing that it's unconstitutional and discriminatory. The Council on American-Islamic Relations says the organization, if it
that's what I just said,
has to, will sue to get relief.
All right, it's no surprise there that this is going to receive a lot of backlash from CAIR. But let's see what Governor Abbott has to say about this himself in an interview with Dana Lausch. Let's check this out.
Talk to us about what is happening. I mean, people are saying that we are having Sharia courts, Islamism is spreading, and that there are now residential areas that are being constructed that are considered no-go areas for Christians. What are you seeing in your office?
So we're seeing growing trends about everything you just talked about. And I got to tell you, there's not a governor in America that's done more to push back against all that than I have. I signed a law to ensure that only Texas law and Texas courts govern any legal issue in the state, and Sharia law has no authority to govern anything in our state. I signed a law that put an end to that epic city development, ensuring that you cannot have residential real estate developments that basically eliminate any residents and their others than those who are part of the Muslim community. That violates the laws in the state of Texas, but also with regard to Epic City, the way they structured the whole process, for one, we believe violates Texas laws. For another, we have at least 4 agencies that are still currently investigating Epic City. We have the Attorney General's office, we have the Texas Rangers, we have the State Securities Board, as well as the Texas Commission on Environmental Equality. The point is this, even though I signed a law to put an end to it, we know, as you kind of just suggested, that they have never broken ground on Epic City. They have now tried to rebrand themselves under something more innocuous like the Meadow, but it's still the same people behind all that process that are operating it. And so our goal is to make sure that the ways in which they're trying to circumvent Texas law and Texas jurisdiction is not going to be allowed.
Yeah, that's
All right. So he is aware that Epic City has rebranded itself to the Meadow. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in this video, but that's what people are concerned about, is that, is this just political theater? Is this law he signed in this legislative session, is it just theater? And it doesn't matter if you don't, all these laws that you signed don't matter unless you actually enforce them.
they decided that they're going to resubmit. I don't know if they've done this already. They've, according to Community Capital Partners, they're apparently planning to resubmit to Collin County and seek approval to form their own municipal utility district now under the Meadow, because, you just change the name, Governor, and everyone's like, it's a new project, it's okay.
Well, and such a harmless name.
Right.
But listen, they can change the name, but they can't change the legality of the flawed structure they're trying to impose. You mentioned something, Dana, earlier. You talked about concerns about no-go zones. And if you look at the way this process was structured when it was Epic City, and I have no doubt the same will be true for the Meadow, and that is they did have no-go zones. They had a system where if you bought land there and you wanted to sell that land, you're going to be required to have to sell that land back to the mosque and the imam in charge of that. That's not the freedom of property or freedom of transaction that's allowed in the state of Texas. And that's just one of several different ways in which they were trying to limit that entire area to being Muslim only. And that also violates both the laws and constitution of the state of Texas.
And I thought, and for those just joining, we're talking to Texas Governor Greg Abbott from one of the, and I don't know if this is, sometimes there's a lot of information online and you're trying to vet and see what's true and what isn't, because things can be overblown or underblown really. But there were some reports that I guess like HOA fees or things like that would actually be paid to the mosques in these communities. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah. Sure. And that's exactly right. And it gets even more complicated and maybe worse because whether they're called HOA fees or whatever, there are fees that are required to be paid. It goes to the mosque. And according to the information we have, part of that goes back to officials or leaders, if you would, back in other countries, higher up imams. And so this is something and this is one reason why there's a lawsuit for fraud and other things. And that's because it was not clear at all in the paperwork about how this money was going to be used and how it's going to be required to go back to the mosque and to the mosque leaders, whether they be in the United States or some other country. And so they tried to hide the ball of what they were trying to impose, and only investigations revealed the structure that they had created that was so flawed.
That's insane, because there's no way you could do that with an HOA here anywhere else. If you were paying a church, if the fees had to be directed to a church, people would be filing lawsuits because, from what I understand, that's a violation of state law.
Correct. And that's just one of multiple legal issues that have been raised that are being looked at by the Texas Attorney General as we speak to enforce it, to make sure that whether it be called Epic City or the Meadow or whatever the name they try to operate under, these types of structures based upon the law that are signed are now completely outlawed in the state of Texas.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you're pushing back on this. And why Texas? I guess oil and gas industry. I mean, I guess it would make sense. Talking to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, I wanted to ask you about the Sharia courts. When I first moved here in 2013, and when I originally, had started at the Blaze, still did radio, started at the Blaze, I had to go through Irving, Texas. And it was really stunning to me that just a couple of years before I moved there, Governor, there was a story of an honor killing in Irving, Texas, beautiful suburban neighborhood. And a father had killed his 2 daughters and went on the run before being apprehended because he was upset that they were becoming westernized. Now, you and I
I remember that. That was a crazy situation.
both know Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne, who was the mayor of Irving. They had the clock boy incident. And it seemed like you had CAIR and every other Islamist activist, everybody coming down on Irving police, etc. Then there was the discussion of Sharia courts, because at the same time, they were wanting to establish, I don't know how, a Sharia court in Irving. Now, Governor, you've talked a lot about this. Tell folks, I mean, that's Islamic jurisprudence, which is completely against our American justice system here. We don't have any currently actual legitimate Sharia courts, do we?
Well, if you look at a letter that I issued earlier today, I did tell the public, as well as local law enforcement, that there actually are Sharia courts that are operating in Dallas, and they are trying to impose Sharia law. And I pointed out to local prosecutors, both in Dallas County as well as in Collin County, as well as to the Attorney General, as well as to the Texas Department of Public Safety, that what they are doing with these Sharia courts that we have identified in the letter that I issued today, they are in violation of Texas law, including violation of Texas penal codes. And so what they're doing in part could be considered a crime, but also clearly a violation of the Texas Constitution and our statutes that prohibit Sharia law in the state of Texas.
Who are the entities, Governor, behind this? Because they're getting money to fight for this in some manner, and it's not just from the community.
Well, so that's a great question that we will find out the answer to. However, I believe that one of the organizations behind this is CAIR, and it's one of the reasons why I issued the proclamation that I issued yesterday, and that is to declare the CAIR both a foreign terrorist organization as well as a transnational criminal organization, and to limit the ability of either CAIR or any of their affiliates to buy or own land in the state of Texas.
This holiday season.
All right, so there's that. And there is a court, an Islamic court in Dallas. This is it right here. Right here, Islamic Tribunal. It tells you about their mission, their constitution, and it does talk about Sharia law. So I'll leave this in the description box if you want to take a look at it for yourself, but this is operating in Dallas as we speak. So the thing is, like, why are people? There is a lot of backlash against the governor because they've been pointing these things out to him for months and months. And now that there's an election season coming up, even though he has signed some bills into law, but there's an election season coming up and he has a challenger. Greg Abbott does have a challenger, Doc Pete Chambers, and I feel like that there's been a lot of pressure on the government to really do something about this. And now you see over the past couple of days, he's posting these interviews, he's doing these proclamations, designating these two groups as terrorist, foreign terrorist organizations, looking into these Sharia courts. And that's why it's raising a lot of red flags for the voters here in Texas, because they think this is just political grandstanding and that he's only doing it because there's an election coming up. I mean, in the past, Governor Abbott has acted because he's felt he's felt pressure from the voters, like on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it now, and phone calls, emails. I've even emailed him about certain issues that I've been concerned with, and if you just push him enough, he does tend to act. But a lot of people feel like it's too little, too late, or it's only because, like I said, election season is around. All right, so I want to move on from that. And one of the founders of this organization, CAIR organization, actually had ties to Hamas and was sentenced to prison for 65 years. Two founders of Muslim charity, each sentenced to 65 years in prison. Two founders of the now defunct Holy Land Foundation and Relief and Development have been sentenced by a U.S. district judge in Texas to serve what will likely be the rest of their lives behind bars for helping finance the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas. I will go down. His name is Ghassan El-Ashi of Richardson, Texas. He was sentenced to 65 years in prison, while another defendant, Mohammed El-Mizan, was sentenced to 180 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervisory release. The sentences come 6 months after the federal jury in Dallas found the men and 2 other leaders guilty of funneling more than $12 million to Hamas, which is designated a terrorist organization by the United States in 1995. Now, that is, like I said, this guy was one of the founders of CAIR, and I will get to that right here. This is what Governor Abbott said in his proclamation. Ghassan El-Ashi, a founding board member of the Texas branch for CAIR and treasurer of the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development, who was sentenced to a total of 65 years in prison for financing terrorism in 2009. And he goes on to list more individuals who have been convicted and sentenced to prison for their ties to terrorism. I will leave this in the description box as well, so you can take a look at this whole list of individuals. Yeah, but here is an account on X from Amy Meck. She's really on top of this stuff here. Epic City, the Meadow, whatever you want to call it, whatever they're calling it, this is an account that is on top of this every step of the way. She says, Alert Texas, this is on November 19th. Governor Abbott's statement sounds strong, but Texans on the ground know it's not true. Epic City was never ended. It was rebranded and is still moving forward. County officials and engineering documents prove that county community capital partners and the East Plano Islamic Center simply changed the name to the Meadows and kept advancing the same project. A MED is being pursued. TCEQ filings are expected, and planning documents already use the new name. HB 4221 didn't stop the development. It only stopped the original sales model. The project itself never died. And it seems like Governor Abbott is aware of that based on the interview that we watched. While Austin claimed victory, the people of Josephine, not the governor, have been the ones fighting to protect their community. Veterans, parents, business owners, and refugees from Islamic regimes all testified that this enclave is still a threat to local infrastructure, public safety, and civic cohesion. The truth is simple. Renaming Epic City doesn't change what it is or who is behind it. And until the MED is denied, the TCEQ rejects the application and the AG prosecutes the violations, this project is not halted. Texans aren't fooled. The fight continues because citizens, not politicians, are doing the real work. And I will also leave this in the description box as well, as this is a full article from this woman I was just talking about from the RARE Foundation. Texas rise in Josephine. Citizens push back against the rebranded Epic City. And here's an article that was written by this foundation this woman is a part of. Texans rise in Josephine. Citizens push back against the rebranded Epic City, now called the Meadows. I will leave this in the description box as well, so you can take a look at all of these statements from citizens who live there pushing back on this project. But I found this from Dallas Morning News. Muslim-centric Epic City development gets new name. Here is why. Developers wanted to change the name to avoid public confusion. Epic City, the planned Muslim-centric neighborhood spanning Collin and Hunt counties, has a new name. Representatives for developer community capital partners told the Dallas Morning News Monday that the planned project is now called the Meadow. In light of some public confusion over whether the development would become a separate municipality, community capital partners chose to change the name of the development of Epic City to the Meadow to better describe the beautiful property and the inclusive, family-centered, mixed-use, master plan community being designed, the firm said in a statement. Details on the rebrand were first revealed by Collin County Judge Chris Hill in a Facebook post on Saturday. Plans for the development call for more than 1,000 homes, a K-12 faith-based school, a mosque, elderly and assisted living, apartments, clinics, retail shops, a community college, and sports fields built on 402 acres, roughly 40 miles northeast of downtown Dallas. Community Capital and Partners, a for-profit development group, was formed by members of the East Plano Islamic Center, one of North Texas' largest mosques. The rebrand comes as top-ranking Texas Republicans have directed or requested the state and federal agencies to investigate Community Capital Partners, EPIC, or elements of the project throughout the year. Last month, Attorney General Ken Paxton accused the project developers of violating federal and state securities laws. Paxton did not specifically identify the violations. Paxton said he was interested in filing a lawsuit against Community Capital Partners pending a referral from the Texas State Securities Board. Two investigations tied to development have been settled or closed. In September, the Texas Workforce Commission settled a Fair Housing Act complaint against the developers. Interesting. Separately, the U.S. Department of Justice dropped a civil rights investigation tied to the project in June. The DOJ launched its probe after U.S. Senator John Cornyn expressed concern that developers may discriminate against Jewish and Christian Texans. Texas Governor Abbott previously said a dozen state agencies are investigating potential illegal activities conducted by EPIC and its affiliated entities. Community Capital Partners has repeatedly said it would adhere to the Fair Housing Act, as well as all other applicable state and federal guidelines. The community will open to members of all religions. Engineers for the project met with Collin County development staff last week for a pre-development meeting. No official plans have been submitted to the county or the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality. The residential permitting process has not begun, the firm said. So there's that. They've changed the name to avoid confusion, and they said they're going to be welcome to all religions. But this thing looked like it's in motion. It looks like they're going to move forward with it. So we'll see what happens next on the governor's actions, the attorney general. A big story. It's been going on for it. So we'll see what happens. It's a constantly developing story. So we'll leave that right there. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Take care.